Hello, everyone. Greetings. It's Nicole here from ClinicSense. Thank you so much for joining us today for our lunch and learn. I'm so excited to welcome back Cass today from the Tyagi Accounting Group. We'll be discussing budgeting basics for your practice as we start to look ahead to 2025 and how you can set yourself up for success and, of course, savings. If you have any questions while Cass is presenting today, feel free to drop them into the comments. I'll keep an eye on them and then we'll get to them as soon as we can. I'll also be adding any links that Cass might mention throughout the talk or at the end for how to find the business. So keep an eye on it as well. And so I'm so sure there's so much to cover today, so I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Cass, thank you so much for joining, and I'll hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicole, for the intro. This is my second webinar with ClinicSense, and I just love doing them. It's really fun to just meet new practitioners, interact with different people. And for anyone who's watching this, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, I have to start thinking about 2025. Like, I'm in the middle of my busiest time of year. Everything is crazy. Patients are crazy. Everyone wants to book me tomorrow, right? Of course. But yeah, we need to start thinking about next year because it's going to come, of course, quicker than we all think. And in the midst of your busiest time in 2024 is the best time to reflect on what went well and what didn't go as well for this year, so we can start building up some new habits for 2025. So I'm really excited to be talking about budgeting basics. If my slides will change, there we go. So in this webinar, we're going to cover the most important things that you need to do to set up a business budget for 2025 and beyond. These are skills that you're going to be able to use every year going forward. So we'll talk about why a budget is important, the steps that you need to create a budget. We actually have a freebie, Nicole, I'm going to make sure to give you the link for, we have a budgeting checklist freebie on our website that I definitely want everyone to have access to as well. Kind of accompanies these notes. It's a lot of the same stuff, but it helps. Some common mistakes to avoid, and what do you do now that you have a budget, right? If you go through all the work of making it, what then? What's the point? Having a budget is really an important part of your business, so make sure that you are earning and expensing what you're expecting to do. Okay? That's really what we're looking at. Quick disclaimer, by accessing and participating in this training, you understand that this is not accounting advice and is only meant for education and information. So why is a budget important? Now, I'm going to guess that everyone who's here thinks that budgeting is really important because you decided to register for this webinar. So I think you understand that a budget is important, but I think it's that why. Or some people just say, oh, I'm supposed to build a budget, but you don't really feel like you want to do it or understand why it really is that important. And the budget is important because it sets your overall financial plan. So it's so difficult to estimate your income and your expenses because they change sometimes really like by a lot every single month as well, right? Some months you have your annual membership dues, some months you go on vacation, some months your patients just decide that snow is not worth traveling to see you for, and so your sales can take a hit. It makes reaching your financial goals easier by putting down that plan of what you need to achieve, what those minimums are for your income and what those maximums are for your spending so that you can hold yourself accountable to be able to achieve that goal. It's a roadmap for managing your income, your expenses, and hopefully any other investments as well. As you start to have excess income, you can start making some investments. And you're really going to look at comparing the actual results of how much money you earned and how much money you spent versus your goals throughout the year. And you may be surprised that you actually achieve a lot of your goals or outshine a lot of your goals, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like that in the moment, right? Let's say maybe you're a new practitioner, you just did your first 5,000, like your 5K month. That's a really big goal to achieve, but you're probably just thinking, oh my goodness, I have so much student debt. I have so much stuff going on. I kind of want to change clinics because I don't like this one as much anymore as I used to. And you've got so much other pressure that we don't take that time to appreciate how far we've gotten already. So a budget is essential to set your financial goals and help you monitor how to achieve those goals. That's really what we're wanting. And I do always say that a budget is just what you expect your bookkeeping to look like at the end of the year. So you can also know when large expenses are coming. So I already talked about annual membership dues, maybe your insurance if you pay for it annually as well, or maybe you're thinking about investing in a really expensive continuing education course. Well, now you can plan for when those large expenses are coming and say, oh, okay, if I do this level of sales throughout the first 3 months of 2025, that I can afford this $5,000 training on somatic something perhaps is something that you're interested in, right? So now I've planned that in and I've budgeted it. And instead of taking out debt or putting it on my credit card or not being able to pay for it or not doing it, you've got this plan of when you're going to be able to achieve it. So you really have something to look forward to as well, right? You already know what month your annual dues are paid in. You can plan for that throughout the year, right? We want to pre-save in the 12 months before your annual dues, so you have that money sitting there in your account on the day that it's actually due. And then understanding how much money you must spend per month, right? So your basic costs like your ClinicSense monthly subscription or your payment processing fees, maybe your rent, things like that, that helps you to not take out any unnecessary debt to pay for those regular expenses, because that sort of backs you into how much income you need to target to be able to earn. Could also plan in advance for vacation or leave. That's a fun one, although I'm sure no one, maybe people are thinking about Christmas vacation and closing down between Christmas and New Year's, but no one's thinking vacation right now. But anyone who took vacation in the summer, you know very well you do not get paid when you have time off. So by planning out, in 2025, I'm going to take 2 weeks off in July, so I know that my income is going to be half of what it usually is. Well, now you've got this plan and you can work around it, and you're planning for it, 9 months in advance? That's a lot of time for you to be able to put some money aside, put a little bit in savings, right? It allows you to see how much you will need in the month of July to earn an income. And then, maybe if you're thinking about the continuing education course, you wait a little bit later in the year if it's not actually financially available to you, right? And there's so many different things that you can see by planning out your budget and what you're planning on spending and earning throughout the year. You'll also be able to save in the months beforehand for those big expenses or for your vacation, so that you can enjoy it hopefully stress-free. That's the whole point of vacation. And stress-free, I do not define that as spending the whole time catching up on your charting, okay? So I challenge you to also do that as well. You're also better able to estimate your income taxes. We have a whole section about this as well, but your income tax is based off of your full year income. So if you plan, okay, I think that by the end of the year, I'm going to make $90,000, that's different than if you were to just earn $50,000, right? The amount that you have to save for tax is very different between those numbers. So now when you build your budget for your income for the year, it just becomes so much easier to estimate our blended rate. And I'm going to walk everyone through that as well at one point. You save this consistent percentage throughout the year instead of realizing in busy season, oh shoot, I undersaved for my taxes because I didn't think I was going to earn this much. You can also monitor your sales growth. This one is really fun because you're looking at what you think you're going to earn in October of next year. And then when you finally get there and you can see, maybe you achieve so many more of your goals. Maybe you're right on budget and you totally knew exactly what was happening. Or maybe you didn't quite make as much as you were anticipating to. And that can be okay if there's reasons for it. But if it's, your clinic is not supporting you as much, or, other things that are just sort of not working your way, maybe your patient retention hasn't worked, that causes you to start looking internally to say, okay, what can I do to fix this, right? What do I need to do if I'm not hitting those goals that I set out for myself? Any questions in the chat so far?
No questions so far.
Good, that means I'm explaining myself well. I also, Nicole, I just realized that I don't have a watch or any way of telling time on my screen. So please, if I'm taking too long, let me know, or I might have to dip out for, I don't even know where my cell phone is. I'll have to figure out how to keep us on time.
That's okay. I'll give you a 15-minute clock heads up.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, now let's talk about the steps to create a budget. So this is what everyone is here for. You're like, okay, how do I do that though, Cass? That sounds really great. You're so smart. This is wonderful. Yeah, let's totally do this. How do I do that? Here we go. Okay. And I'm so sorry to everyone to tell you this in busy season, but you have to do 2024 bookkeeping. Sorry. That's the best way to know what your expenses and what your income typically look like in a year, by getting your bookkeeping up to date, and specifically by month, so that you can track what you typically spend, what you typically earn, and then plan for if that's going to be the same or different in 2025. Budgeting is just setting up what you expect your bookkeeping to look like at the end of the year. So completing your current year bookkeeping is really the best place to start. It gives you that really good idea. And again, it tells you what month you have your annual membership dues, or what month you tend to take vacation, things like that, or even just the seasonality profile of your business as well, right? Depending on what type of practitioner you are, you might be really slow in the summer, or you could be really busy in January and then slower the rest of the year. Those are such good things to know about your business and how it earns money, so that you can plan for it. Then in the future, if someone's saying, oh, we should go on 2 weeks vacation in January, but you see that it's your busiest month, then you're at least making an informed decision about letting go of that amount of income. Whereas let's say June is your lowest month of the year, and now you're able to take time off during that month, you're not going to lose as much money, right? Because you're not really busy anyways. So that can be really beneficial. You also have to determine what your business goals are. So this is a lot of journaling, some journal prompts. I'm sure the therapists on this call are loving me right now, but you really have to think about what you want to accomplish in the year and even the years ahead. So how do you think your business is going to grow and evolve? What are your goals for it? And your goal might be to stay the same, and that's totally okay as well. Your goal might even be to scale back. Maybe you're working too much and you're like, no, thank you. I would like some time off, right? That's okay, because now you can plan for that and understand what that financial impact is going to look like. Understanding these goals will help you to create a budget that supports and helps you achieve all of those goals that you're talking about. And think of your budget as a roadmap. It's going to guide your financial choices and how to allocate your resources as well. So your time, your money, and anything else. Also review your past financial and non-financial information. So look at your information from ClinicSense, right? Look at your reports. Take a look at how much GST or HST you've collected in specific months. Take a look at the seasonality profile. Take a look at how many gift certificates you sold in specific months as well, right? That's all really important information. It gives you better insights into your data and into your plan. And if you're just starting out, that's okay. You can talk to other practitioners at the clinics, talk to any mentors that you may have as well, more experienced therapists, more experienced practitioners, and maybe even looking at some industry information as well. There's a lot of information out there. And realize that the first time that you ever do a budget, I promise it will not be perfect. If you ever have a perfect budget, please do tell me, because I have yet to make one. Actually, it takes a lot to learn about the ups and downs, and it's all based off of estimates and assumptions as well. And then let's also talk about what's going to be changing from last year. So again, I can give you guys a really good one. CPA Ontario is no longer a part of CPA Canada. It doesn't affect our status as accountants, which is fantastic, but my fees are going down by $300. So I can update that in my next year budget and know that I don't have to pay quite as much for my annual dues as I do this year. Maybe even your product or service offerings. Maybe you're thinking of launching an online program, or you're thinking of getting into a new type of modality as well, right? Your pricing, your operating costs, marketing, staffing, anything else that you might need. Think about what's going to be changing, what's going to be different in a year from now. Will it be more spending or maybe less spending as well? And then you just have to prioritize the investments that you want to make. And that's the hardest part, is picking which one you actually want to go with. So you have to pick which investment is essential for your practice's growth and success, right? If you want to hire an admin staff, but you don't want to decrease the amount of money that you're earning, well, then you have to have more sessions to have more money to be able to pay your admin staff, right? But if that's an important investment for you, then working more to be able to get that admin staff so you don't have to do all this manual tasks anymore is absolutely worthwhile. But it's just sort of thinking in advance about what those trade-offs are going to be able to achieve all of your financial goals. Okay. Those are the steps. It's really easy, I promise everyone. Nicole, again, I'm going to make sure that you've got the link to our budgeting checklist so that everyone can download it. They'll have it with them as well and be able to take a look. Any questions in the chat so far?
No questions yet. You're still on track to being a perfect presenter.
Oh my goodness, no pressure. Now I'm like, oh, hold on. Okay, now let's talk about Profit First. And I'm sure most people on the call have heard about this methodology. Profit First is one of the most talked about budgeting techniques, and it's really hitting strides. There's Profit First for therapists, there's Profit First for chiropractors, there's the original Profit First. There's lots of options when it comes to Profit First. And so if you've heard of it, I'm just going to demystify it a little bit for you as well. So Profit First is this method and way of budgeting by allocating a percentage of the money that you receive to different things based off of your actual cash inflow. So I was just talking about your budgeting and I was like, hey guys, let's think about what your sales are going to be. Let's think about what your expenses are going to be. And then you have what's left over. Do you like that number? If not, let's change some of those numbers, right? Set bigger sales goals or decrease your expenses. The idea with Profit First is that you get your sales, you pay yourself, and then you only spend what's left. Okay, so it's just a little bit different. And this method does work really well for a lot of people. Okay, the main strategy within Profit First is to make sure that you, as the owner of your business, are paid. That's really what we want, right? That's what everyone wants. Whether you go by Profit First budgeting or by kind of traditional budgeting, either one will work for you. And that's what we're wanting to do and get there. Okay, so some of the allocations account include your owner's pay, profit, taxes, and operating expenses. Those are kind of the big ones. And typically for a smaller practice, like a solo practitioner, you as the owner should keep 50% of every dollar that you bring in. So let's say one of your sessions is $150. That means that you should get $75 for that time, because that was a lot of work and a lot of energy. So you should be able to keep quite a bit of that. The next one is a profit account. The idea behind the profit account is that you set money aside, and then every quarter or every 6 months, you use it for something fun, right? Celebrate your business, celebrate your wins that you have with this little 5% profit, maybe a date with your spouse, or maybe taking your kids out for something, who knows, or a self-care day, yoga retreat, something like that could be really fantastic. Then 15% for taxes. Typically, this 15% number works for income tax only, does not include GST, HST, so keep that in mind as well. It tends to be a little bit higher once we have to include sales tax, if that's applicable to you. And then 30% for operating expenses. So we're really trying to keep our operating expenses minimal, but the downside of that is that then you don't get to invest in quite as many courses or quite as much, admin staff and other things as well. Right? So depending on the size of your practice and how much money you need to live, this is just a more simplified budgeting technique, right? Okay, I just got $5,000 into my bank account. I'm going to take $2,500. That's mine. I'm going to take this percentage and save it for taxes. I'm going to take this and put it towards my credit card bill to pay for my operating expenses, etc. So that's the idea. Okay. Now let's talk about some mistakes to avoid, because I see mistakes all the time, and I would like you guys to not make them. Let's learn from others' mistakes. It's always great to learn from other practitioners. So one of the most common mistakes is setting unrealistic goals, right? A lot of people will come to me and say, oh, I want to double my income. Well, but if you're already seeing 30 patients per let's say 20 patients per week, can you actually see 40 patients per week? Well, let's take a therapist as an example, right? So, probably seeing 40 patients per week is going to lead you to a lot of burnout. So is that something that you can actually do? All right. Or sometimes I get chiropractors who say, oh, I'm going to double book. I'm just going to go back and forth in between the rooms. Okay. Do you even like that style of practice? Right? Is that something that you actually want to do? If it's not, then that's not something that's actually sustainable for you. That's not realistic, right? You're not going to actually enjoy what you're doing. So it's important to be optimistic, but also equally crucial to be realistic when you are estimating your income. We want to think good case scenario, not if everything magically came into play, right? So for example, budgeting growth by 50% next year, do you actually have that capacity, right? Or does that mean that you have to start working in a new clinic? Or does that mean that you need to open up your own private practice now instead of working at a clinic, right? There's so many different options for what that looks like, but it's all about reflecting on it and planning for the future. Not planning for unexpected expenses or for revenue shortfalls. I mean, we've all been there in February when patients just call in and they say, well, it's snowing. Of course, I'm not leaving my house. I've been one of those patients. I apologize to my practitioners, right? If it's snowing, I'm not going. It doesn't matter how badly I need to be adjusted or get a massage. So it's important to allocate some funds. Important to allocate some funds for these unexpected situations, protect your business, right? You never know what's going to happen, where you might have a random car expense. I'm going to knock on wood as I say this, but maybe something with your car, or you never know what's going to happen. So setting up a business bank account with about 3 months of your salary, and you can save this slowly over time, right? You don't have to save 3 months of your salary right away. But you can take the next year and a half, slowly save up over time a bit of an emergency fund as well. It's just really beneficial for you. Not monitoring your budget. So again, I said, we're going to go through all this work. We're going to create this budget. And then what? Well, you need to look at it, right? You need to plan for September 2025. And then in September 2025, look at what your plan is and make sure that you're still on track to hit that plan. And even, I know some clients of ours who literally have their 2 tabs open. One is their budget and one is their bookkeeping, and they never close those windows in their Google Sheets. So they've constantly got those open. They're constantly getting that financial feedback for their business as well. And then when they add something in for their bookkeeping, they then take a look at their budget and make sure that they're still on track. You don't have to be that level of detail, but could be a good strategy or good idea for you as well. If your original business budget becomes unobtainable, maybe you get to March or April next year and you say, whoa, I can never do this. That's okay, right? Just review it and understand why it's happening, right? What happened? What's that big change? What did you learn in March or April that you didn't know in October when you originally set up this budget, right? We're constantly evolving and learning and growing. And by reviewing your budget throughout the year, you can stay on track and make those more informed financial decisions. That's what it's all about, right? A lot of people tend to make very emotional financial decisions, myself included. Like, I'm planning on ordering Uber Eats later today because I don't want to cook today, right? That's a very emotional decision, not as much of a practical one. But by taking a look at my budget, I can maybe get myself on track a little bit more, or maybe only order a little bit during the first half of the month or something like that, as I'm trying to stay more on track for my budget. And those emotional decisions will always come in as well, and that's okay. Rigidly following last year's budget or bookkeeping. Again, we talked about all those best practices of thinking about what's going to change. So last year's information is super useful. It tells you a lot of information about your business, about how you spend money and all of that. But it's really important to adapt to your budget and the current year's circumstances and goals, right? Rigidly following last year without considering changes in expenses or income or even your business goals, right? They're probably so much different than they were a year ago. So that might be unrealistic and inefficient budgeting, right? And then if you're never hitting your budget and your goals, well, then budgeting just becomes something that you never want to take a look at again because you feel like you did it wrong, which there is no wrong budget. Every budget is always wrong, I promise you. And it's more about the exercise. But at least if you're making those more informed decisions and thinking through about the future, instead of just copying last year, saying, I'll do this again, just gives you a better place to start. And forgetting to plan for investments and growth. This is a really big one as well, right? If you need to upgrade your laptop, right? That's a really big expense that you should be budgeting for. If you want the new iPhone because it's got that new little camera feature, fantastic. You need to budget for that and plan for that, right? Because those are really big expenses that can dramatically change your financial situation, right? Depending on how early you are in your practice as well, or how much you're set up. Maybe even if you want to invest in a new website, those things are expensive. Or the professional development that we've been talking about this entire time as well, right? So make sure that you're planning for all of those investments and all of that growth in your revenue as well that you're going to do. Okay. I will say that's most of our stuff about budgeting. Now I'm going to talk about saving for income tax because this is really important and is the number one question that I get from everyone. But I just want to take a minute here to pause, see if any questions come through in the chat about budgeting, things to talk about before we get into taxes, savings.
No new questions, but I will give anyone that has just joined or recently joined a reminder that you can just drop any questions into the comments. And for people who are rewatching a replay of this Lunch and Learn after it's done, if you have any questions, add it into the chat anyway. I do keep an eye on them, or just message me and we can always come back to your questions afterwards. Thanks.
Yeah. I love getting emails after the fact. Everyone, please ask all of your questions. I know this stuff feels really intimidating as well. And I mean, it's October. Everyone's brain is probably almost fried thinking about just the next few weeks and getting through benefit season.
I thought you were going to say Halloween.
And Halloween, all that candy, my goodness. Fantastic. November 1st is more the holiday for me when you buy the discounted candy, but I'll just leave that there.
Smart. You see, you are an accountant.
All right, accountant things. Let's talk about saving for income tax. Okay, I want to make sure that no one is ever under saving. Again, one of the big questions that I get is, Cass, how much should I save for taxes? And I will say it's very specific to you, your situation, your family, your everything that's going on with you. But if you force me to give you a percentage, it's going to be 30% of your income after your expenses. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back to profit first really quick. So here, if you're only keeping 50%, that's how this gets down to 15, okay? Because otherwise, of your total minus the expenses, it's going to be 30. So there's just two different methodologies there. If anyone has any clarifying questions, please do let me know. But in profit first, you're keeping 50%, so that's why you only have to save 15%. Whereas in traditional budgeting, you're bringing in 100% and then spending, and it's whatever's left over after that, that's what you're going to save 30% on, okay? So there's three components to personal income taxes: federal income tax, provincial income tax, and the Canada Pension Plan contributions as well. It's the total of these three that make up your tax bill that's due April 30th of each year. Or if you're lucky enough to have to pay installments, you would have just made one in September and you have another one coming up in December as well. Federal tax brackets start at a minimum of 15%, and this threshold changes every year, which is indexed to inflation. And then your first tax bracket is always taxed at that 15%, regardless of your income. In Canada, we have what's called a step-up rate. Once your income is above that threshold, the next level is charged at 20.5%. And then when you hit another bracket, income above that level is taxed at the next bracket, which is 26%. So in 2024, we've got 55,000 at 15%, and then up to about 110, right? The next from 55 to 110 is 20.5%. And then from 110 for another 60,000 is 26%. And if you're higher than this, please go back and watch the incorporating webinar that we did just a few months ago as well, because that's way too much taxes to be paying, okay? So this is why it's important to think about budgeting and saving for the full year, because if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to be 80,000, well, it doesn't make sense to save 15% for a while and then jump up to saving 20.5% later once you've hit this threshold, right? We want to save based off of 80,000 full year. It gives you an average blended rate. So what that looks like, let's say we're looking at 100,000, 15% on your first 55,000, and then 20.5% on 55 up to 100,000. Right? So that gives us 17.47%. So not 15, not 20, 17.5% for your federal tax component. Okay. And that's kind of part of that 30% number that I spewed out at the beginning that everyone makes me give them. But it could be a lot lower as well, right? You know, if your income is only going to be 55,000, maybe you have a lot of expenses coming up in the year. So if your income is only going to be 55,000, that's a lot less. So then you would only save 15%. You get a 2% discount or 2.5% discount on saving for your federal taxes. Okay, now that's one component. The next component is your provincial income tax, but of course we are a Canada-wide webinar, so I can't really go through a detail here, but provincial tax works the exact same way as federal taxes, just has different brackets and rates. Each province has their own brackets and rates, and they're really easy to find if you Google them. And if you have any questions, please do let us know as well. More than happy to guide you in the right direction. Then we have our Canada Pension Plan contributions. The maximum amount for 2024 is 11.9% of your income, but there's a maximum of $7,000. So this is around $60,000, $70,000 worth of income. So once you go above that, you no longer have to worry about saving for CPP. This is why thinking of that full year blended amount makes so much more sense, because we're averaging out. Let's say if you're still making that 100,000, well, now this is only 7.7%. It's not 11.9 of your 100,000, right? So there's a few different components and pieces that go into that. And again, if you do have any questions, this is a lot of tax talk. More than happy to answer any questions. There's also a new CPP enhanced program. It's nice and small, though, only additional $376, but hopefully will help with retirement funding for all of us once we finally get there. So just keep that in mind that this did go up a little bit this year as well. Corporate income tax, just in case there's anyone who's incorporated on the call, just like personal income tax, corporate tax has both federal and provincial tax payable. There's various types of income, though, that are treated differently. I'm going to be talking today exclusively about business income. Investment income is a little bit more tricky, so you definitely want to talk to an accountant about that. And capital gains actually just had all of their rules changed this year for corporations, which was very sudden, actually, which was kind of frustrating. But just keep that in mind that these two are taxed very differently as well. So you really need an accountant to have some strategy with you, okay? Federal corporate tax starts at 38%, but then if you're only operating in Canada, you get 10% discount. If you are owned, if the company is owned by a Canadian, it's another 9% discount. And then if the business has taxable income of less than $500,000, you get another 10% off. So that gets you down to only 9%. And the slide does say 2023, it's the same rates for 2024. These guys don't change very much. So it's 9% only for your federal income tax. And then we just have to add on provincial, which is typically about a 1 to 3% range, depending on the province that you live in. And then keep in mind that your GST HST filing is completely separate from all of this percentage and income tax saving stuff that we were talking about, okay? So just keep that in mind, that you're wanting to be mindful about calculating what your average rate is for the entire year, but you also want to think about saving for GST HST, because that one is really important. You definitely don't want to undersave. And a lot of clients tell me that they hate filing GST, HST, but I really like doing quarterly filing because it just keeps you on top of it, keeps you accountable to doing your bookkeeping on a more frequent basis as well. And remember that it's ultimately your customers who are paying the GST, HST. It's not really a tax to you. You're just collecting it and then giving it to the government, right? That on a $100 service, that $13 or $5 or $15 that you get, it's not really yours. It's never been yours, right? We're just holding that on behalf of the government. All right, how did I do on time? Oh my goodness, that was a short webinar.
Yeah, you did great.
It to be that short. Usually, I feel like the last time I did this similar slide deck, there were so many questions, but it's different when you're in a Facebook group. So I think it's just a little bit less dynamic when we can't have people coming off of mute and asking their questions. But here are the most important points that we covered in this webinar. Your budget will help you to plan for your cash flow. That's really what we're trying to do, right? Is to figure out how much money you're going to end up with at the end of the year or the end of each month. We're going to think critically about your expenses and your income goals and plan for what 2025 is going to look like for you. Avoid some common mistakes by thinking critically about your practice and your goals. If you want to earn more or earn less, that's totally okay. You're allowed to want to learn less as well. And update your budget every single year to stay on track. This is a process you're going to do every single year in your busiest time of year, but maybe everyone can do this between Christmas and New Year's before you're getting set up for January and taking a bit of a break. But having a budget is an important part of your business so that you can make sure that you are earning and spending what you expect. That's the goal, is to hold yourself accountable to all of these decisions that you're thinking critically about. Thanks,
Amazing.
everyone.
Thank you so much. I know a lot of our community likes to rewatch the lunch and learns when they have the time at the end of the day or whenever they can. So again, if you have any questions, if you're rewatching after our live, feel free to drop them in the comments or reach out to Cass. Kat, on that note, how can people find you?
Yeah, so TyagiGroupAccounting.ca. I am, Nicole, I'm going to send you the link specifically for the budgeting freebie so that everyone can get access to that as well. And we do highlight a few of our blogs. We've got a lot of different blogs on budgeting on our website as well. TyagiGroupAccounting.ca is where you're going to find all of this good stuff. And I'm really excited to connect with everyone, and happy budgeting.
Thank you so much. I can't already wait for next time. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.